Going into the second part of this watercolor unit, these are going to be our guiding truths. Artists learn from other artists. Artists observe both the world around them and other artworks. And artists practice. No one is just suddenly a good basketball player, just like how you're not just born an amazing artist. You have to practice and train your eyes and train your hands, getting better and better. And that's really what we're going to focus on today. In this first activity, you're going to choose one artist's work. I have a few artists that I feel you'll like and are achievable for you to replicate. So you're going to choose one artist, investigate their work, pick it apart, and you're going to copy it as well. As I'm going through the different artist choices, there's not an easy artist or a hard artist. Please just choose the one whose work you genuinely like the most. If you're not really interested in their work, you're not going to enjoy this exercise very much. And everyone has different preferences, and so I tried to honor that in the artists that I chose. The first one is Elise Morris, who works with these sort of floral botanical shapes, and she deals a lot with soft versus hard edges and creating depth. The second is Jennifer Tyers, and she works in a way that almost looks like she's working with acrylic because of her bold use of color and flat shapes and the way that she makes lots of different marks. Enya Todd, who is a true illustrator, working generally representationally, meaning that she is painting things that exist in real life, and she does it in a whimsical and sort of playful way. Emma Larson, who deals with kind of otherworldly, almost abstract planes of color, but they also look like characters. Her work is really fun if you're trying to kind of stay 1 foot in abstraction, but also 1 foot in real life. Frank Webb, who also works very representationally, but in a painterly way. He deals a lot with landscapes and seascapes, and there's a lot of architecture present in his work. For any one of these artists, when you click their name, it'll take you to a Google Drive folder, I should say, and you can view some more of their artworks to get a better idea of what it is that they're about and what it is that they do. So the actual activity is that you're going to choose one artist to explore and learn from, and on a sketchbook page that I'm going to give you, you're going to include the artist's name, their general subject matter, so what do they work with? Are they working with landscapes? Are they working with fruits and vegetables? So kind of what I just went over, and then why you selected this artist. What about their work stood out to you? Then you're going to choose one piece from their work. Please choose a piece that is in the actual Google Drive folder. This way I'm able to keep you accountable, and also I chose works that I feel are manageable for all of you to be able to render. So you're going to choose one piece and you're going to illustrate different parts of their work. Essentially, you're going to copy sections of their paintings. And while you're copying, you're also going to be making notes regarding the following. What watercolor techniques are they using? How are they using space? And how are they using color? If you're wondering why we are doing this, I'll tell you why. By copying, you really learn how someone thinks. You're in their head, you are tracing their marks, and you're learning about how they are making their choices. And one of the hardest things about making your own artwork is making those choices. So by copying someone else, it kind of serves as a roadmap, or at least gives you some ideas about how you might approach your own work. We're striving for accuracy. This is not an exercise that I want you to just rush through. I'm really hoping that you are able to copy, that I can't tell the difference between the part of their painting and your painting. This means that you're going to have to slow down. And when you're slowing down, this is going to improve your drawing skills. And even though we're not drawing with pencil, you're drawing with your brush. It's also going to improve your color mixing skills because as you're looking at the picture, you need to match those colors. This means going back to our tints and shades and going back to how we utilize complementary colors as well. And then last but not least, improving your brush control and again, kind of trying to figure out how much water is necessary when working with watercolor. And that last one is just going to be a forever, really all of them are just forever things that we want to improve upon. So my example is the work by John Marin, or Marin, I'm not quite sure. I've decided to focus on this image here. So on my paper, I'm going to write the artist's name is John Marin, or Marin. The general subject matter when I look at his work is landscapes and seascapes. And the reason why I selected this artist is because I tend to work very representationally and really tight. And so I like that his style is really loose and almost feels abstract because of how loose his brushwork is. From this image, I'm going to choose areas to focus on that I want to replicate. I'm not expecting you to replicate the entire artwork in your little study sort of sketch paper, but just choose 3 sections. I'm just using 2 for this example, but you're going to choose 3 to fill up 3 different quadrants. As you're looking at each detail, before you start to paint, ask yourself, what might this artist have done first? What might they have done second? What might they have done third? Just like in math with order of operations, thinking about what you might have to do first for the second and third thing to make sense and be successful. Also asking yourself, what techniques maybe are they using here? How are they achieving this effect? Here's my example of what this exercise is going to look like. On your paper, you're going to divide it into 4 quadrants. On that first quadrant, you're going to include the artist's name, the subject matter, and why you selected the artist. And the other 3 is where you're going to do your illustrations of certain sections of one painting that you choose. When you're illustrating a particular section, you don't have to do everything, particularly if it's kind of complex. As you can see in my example here, this is what I'm working from. I didn't include every single detail, just enough to get what I feel are the major parts of that section. You're going to note the techniques that you're using, wet and to wet, glazing here, line weight, thick to thin, and I also wrote some notes for myself that I really had barely any water on my brush, and down here using washes. I want you to do this so that I can see that you know what it is that you're doing and that you can write down these techniques and use them in your own work. And the notes are really helpful for you if you want to return to this and be able to see how you achieved a particular look. Some tips for success. The first is to have your watercolor technique sheet next to you. Please do not ask me, what's that one watercolor technique? Look at your technique sheet because that's what it's for. It's for your reference. The second is don't work from the entire image, but rather screenshot a particular area so you can zoom in. If you don't do that and you're working from the entire painting, it's easier to get lost and just harder to maintain a focus. If you don't know how to screenshot, just raise your hand and ask me and I will help you do that. The third is that we all know now that the dry time is just not the best and not the funnest of moments, but it's really crucial in order to not overwork or mess up a particular part. So if you need to wait for something to dry, then skip around your piece and work on something else. Also, if you get frustrated with a particular area, leave it alone, work on something else, and then go back to it. The fourth is to choose a brush that makes sense for what you're doing. Now I know that I talked about using the same brush to achieve both a thin line weight and a thick line weight, but if you have an area that clearly looks like it's a really big brush stroke, or you have to cover a lot of an area with a particular color wash, then it makes sense to use a big brush. And if you have an area that has a ton of detail work, it probably makes sense to just use a smaller brush. The fifth is to use the area of your palette that's to the side of all the color wells. don't just go straight from a particular color onto your paper. That palette is there for you to mix your colors together and for you to be able to test, do I have too much water? Do I not have enough water? That's really where you get to try things out before you go onto the final paper. Which brings me to almost my most important tip, or the constant, is that less water is more. I'd say 90% of the time, and 90% of students tend to gravitate towards using too much water. If you know you're using too much water, have your paper towel and just simply dab it, squeeze out the extra water, and less water is definitely better than more water. The next one is to use your paper towel to soak up any mistakes. So if you make a mark and you're like, whoops, I didn't mean to do that, just take a paper towel and wipe it away real fast. And if you put too much water, you can just dab that water away as well. The last one, and maybe the most important one, is this is definitely about quality over quantity. I know that some people work more quickly, other people work more slowly, and all of that is fine. But I'm really interested in the quality of what it is that you're producing. So if in the amount of time that you only have time to do one little study, and it's immaculate and beautiful, that is totally fine. I would rather have one or two really nice ones over 3 messy, sort of rushed ones. I don't compare you to anyone else in the class, and I don't compare you to me. I just compare you to you, and I want you to do the best that you can.